People no longer under an NDA. What surprising secrets can you expose? Let's find out. Story 1. Walmart corporate office puts a screensaver on all their workers' computers with a message urging them to donate to an emergency fund for their FT or near FT warehouse and retail workers. Instead of giving them healthcare or PTO, Walmart retail and warehouse workers are kept just below FT, so they can't get benefits, and the vast majority receive government benefits. Your taxes are subsidizing millions in benefits for the richest company in America, so the richest CEO in America is richer. Everything in the second paragraph of this post is public knowledge. Story 2. In a tech support role, one manager used to boast his team's average call times were the lowest in the company. While average call times were in the 12 to 17-minute range, his team was constantly under 10 minutes. His team was awarded multiple times, and his strategy was adopted company-wide to all customer service and technical support teams, including our internal IT teams. That strategy was under a strict NDA, as we did not want to allow competitors to emulate it. When our call center would go bid on contracts, it became an awesome metric. Our customer satisfaction scores are on par, but we have call times 20 to 30% lower than our competitors. The dirty secret of the NDA that I was not allowed to disclose? Their big method? Just hang up on people. Straight up. Find a way to say, okay, go ahead and do that, and call back if it doesn't fix it. Then hang up. Don't wait for confirmation. Okay, so reboot your PC, and your problem should be solved. Thanks for calling. Click. Eventually they came out with more useful metrics that tracked things like first call resolution, which absolutely shredded this company, and they went out of business a year or two later. Story 3. Many years ago I used to work help desk, and there was one girl who would have stats way better than anyone else with calls taken and time on calls. A few times I sat beside her and saw that she would take calls for about a minute, then hang up. I thought this was weird as she would do it about 8 to 10 times a shift. One time when I was walking by her I saw that she was calling someone on her cell phone, then her phone would ring. She was calling into the 1 to 800 number when it was her time in the queue, go through the prompts and take her own call. She would hang up before a minute was up so that it would register as a call taken. Story 4. I worked for a website creation company back in 1999, managing the website for a big brand/large bank that was sponsoring a round-trip paid ticket to the Super Bowl. I worked on the website that collected all the entries, and I posted the rules that the company's legal department wrote to describe the rules of the contest. A random winner was to be selected for the prize, and I wrote a software tool to randomly pick the winner to be used when the contest was over. When the contest ended, I was told to forget my tool, forget the rules, just look in the database and find someone in South Florida, where the Super Bowl was in 1999, so the company wouldn't have to pay for airfare. Story 5. I was never under an NDA, but the hotel is under new ownership, so I guess I can say it now. The hotel had no internet connection starting around 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like clockwork every night. If it was just a system fault or if it was cost-cutting. But without internet, the security cameras didn't work or record anything. The fire alarm system doesn't work either. The alarms go off, but it doesn't call for help. So if we had a fire that started at 3 a.m., for example, then unless someone else that's driving by calls it in, I have no idea what's happening. One night we had an assault happen in the parking lot. The police needed camera evidence, and our cameras didn't record anything because the internet was out. So that was fun explaining to the detectives. Story 6. About 20 years I signed an NDA with a very large record company regarding their attempts to get into selling their catalog online. Streaming, sales, etc. It was a minefield because they were still wary of pissing off high street retailers, and that's where the charts came from. These attempts were frustrated by their top-level corporate guys. One week they all went to a what is an MP3 conference in Buenos Aires to get them up to speed. The thing is they spent so much time partying the only talk which seemed to stick was the scare tactics about how teens could scrape MP3s from the web, and they could be copied and redistributed easily. When they came back, every item in the catalog was ordered to be scrubbed from the web. Number 30-second previews, nothing should be audible. Not a hint of audio. Lock it all down. Put all the tapes in a chest and seal it with concrete at the bottom of the sea. That's going to make everyone go back to CDs, good old profitable CDs. Story 7. Worked in technical customer support for a IT/hardware company. We were sold a bad batch of chips from a supplier. The chips caused random watchdog resets, which would cause random crashes/reboots. The company got a settlement due to it to remediate it, but the MBA/legal types deemed it too expensive to fix what was already in the field, so they fixed it in support. We had very strict talking points when our customers would report this issue. Everyone in the support team knew what the issue was and had each worked several cases of it. But our script made us act stupid, like it was a unique case that had never happened before. It is kind of hard to do that when you have replaced multiple units for the same customer in several weeks, but if you diverted from the talking points, you got counseled by management. This issue caused several very high-level outages/issues at many of our customers. We knew why, and we were told to act dumb and bury it in process/procedures, so we didn't take the hit on needing to replace the known faulty hardware. Story 8. In Prince George's County, Maryland, county transit bus drivers are instructed following an accident they are not to speak to anyone until a supervisor arrives on the scene. An approved method for not talking, especially to other drivers involved, is to feign injury. There's actually money allotted to pay the fines related to wasting 911 and emergency resources, because analysts determined it was cheaper than costs associated with drivers accidentally admitting fault. There's also an entire audit and analysis team related to accidents because of the sheer volume of people who falsely claim to be on a bus during an accident. To clarify, the current PG County, the bus transit system, is run by a company called RATP. They were hired during COVID, which was after I left the state. The company running the buses until 2020 was called Veolia. Story 9. The private school I worked for was for students identified with giftedness. The owner of the school administered the giftedness test. Can you pay the tuition? You're gifted. Can your sibling pay? Them too. Your cousin? Neighbor? Kid you know across town? You're all gifted. Story 10. No great secret here, but the beverage industry is absolutely cutthroat. If you think about it, you'll never walk into a Walmart that doesn't have both Coke and Pepsi, or Budweiser and Coors, etc. To that end, if you work for Coke, you'll never get rid of Pepsi. You'll never convince your clients, the stores, to stop carrying those core brands. So the battle shifts to whatever odd flavor of vanilla cranberry Sprite or Diet Extreme Mountain Dew they can concoct. They'll always have 3 shelves of Coke and 3 of Pepsi, but the battle is all for that one shelf of the new experimental or seasonal flavors. Because beating the competition means winning this tiny battle in the overall war, they get absolutely toxic on their own employees to execute. 16-hour shifts, unreasonable expectations, long hours, unsafe working conditions, etc. The list goes on. They work union employees, hourly, to 39.999999 hours, and then clock them out automatically. They'll make a salaried office worker drive by a 7-Eleven after work and restock some items. We're talking like an office accountant, not someone who works in the sales or delivery functions. They'll pull an HR rep out of meetings to go construct a Santa Claus train out of soda boxes at Kroger because the hourly union guy hit his time for the week. With most jobs, if you need an hour for a doctor's appointment, it's not too much hassle as long as you cover your responsibilities. Not this business. Employees were given iPhones or iPads that were low-jacked with GPS tracking. If you ventured off route too long, automatic write-up. If you took too long in a store, you were written up for a delay. If you cleared a store too quickly, you were written up for not schmoozing the store manager more and selling them more seasonal flavors. The entire system is designed to work people to the point of exhaustion, ding them for every single thing, and then essentially blackmail them with the threat of being fired. Everyone is on a perpetual performance plan. There was a bounty system. Employees got reimbursed to narc on other employees. Visit a store on the weekend and see some product out of place? Rat out the guy who runs that route, and you'll get a $25 coffee card. Never mind the fact that it's Saturday, and the product was probably misplaced by a grocery store worker, or even a lazy shopper setting beer back in the diaper aisle. Every aspect of that business is designed to give the employer absolute control and complete freedom to fire you on a whim. In good economies, they'll turn over staff like socks because there are always a million more idiots looking for the prestige of working for a Fortune 500 beverage company. In bad economies, they know they can't backfill, so they'll browbeat you into submission knowing that you can't find another job. I could write a book on this industry, and here's the kicker. I was a manager there for 1 year. That's all it took, so see the ugliness. Story 11. I worked at a cancer charity, and half the people would order things for themselves and charge it to the charity. An eye-opening job for a 16-year-old. Story 12. Manipulation of data to give false impressions of reliability was something I saw quite blatantly utilized with little repercussions. My company was struggling to meet on-time delivery schedules, and for numerous years was as embarrassingly low as 40%. A new manager comes in, and within months we are now boasting an on-time delivery rate on a brilliant 95%. Turns out all he did was change what constituted an on-time delivery. Each time we knew a product would be late, we'd notify the customer of the delay and ask them to confirm they still wanted the order. If they still wanted the product, the on-time delivery would be recorded against the new expected date as opposed to the original promised date. Company literature was being sent out boasting of our 95% on-time delivery, now amongst the highest in the industry, when in fact we were by that point meeting less than 30% of initial delivery schedule targets. It was so simple that I'm sure numerous companies are getting away with such underhand tricks. Story 13. I briefly worked at a university in South Florida in the late 90s and early aughts. I was chosen to be on an academic integrity team, basically reviewing claims of plagiarism and cheating and deciding between the 5 of us whether it is valid or not. We were made to sign NDAs when we accepted the invite to be a part of the team. There were 3 instances where an employee that was taking classes there clearly cheated, and the issue was brought to our attention. Those 3 times, the cheating was blatant. All 3 times, we were told to let it go, as it would look bad for the university to have it get out. I'm not sure if this is common for other universities, but at the time, I was under the impression that it was common practice everywhere. It was ultimately one of the main reasons I ended up quitting. I was and still am disgusted by it. Story 14. Fortune 500 real estate, long time ago. We know about the black mold problem. We always knew. We do not disclose it. We intentionally do not look into. We don't want to know exactly what kind it is, because if it's dangerous, then we legally have to spend money to fix it. The only department that is allowed to talk about the black mold problem is press and PR, because only they know how to bury it correctly. That was not a great work culture. Story 15. The lady who owns Columbia Sportswear neglects her animals to the point of death. And then she just buys more. I was supposed to be a caretaker for them, but there weren't even basic med supplies like Bute and SWAT or vet wrap. She wouldn't call the vet for almost anything. 2 goats died of malnutrition. Another, its entire hoof fell off. 12 chickens died. 2 mini donkeys died. The guinea pig was kept alone in a hamster cage, and she kept her late husband's dog Monty locked in a dog run. Her dogs were permitted out, but not Monty, even on leash. Initially he was allowed out, and I got with him great shape taking walks every day. But one day she stopped allowing even that. I quit when she started talking about getting 30+ sheep and pigs. It was a miserable place, her mansion. I only worked there a year and brought in my own supplies to treat what I could, but it'll always break my heart I couldn't do more. I called animal control multiple times, and they never helped, even with the goats who looked like walking skeletons. Rich people can do whatever they want to living things. Story 16. In July 2016, Lance Heint was appointed to a 5-year term as superintendent of the Katy Independent School District, ISD. It was a triumphant moment for Heint, one that saw him come back to his hometown to head one of the largest school districts in Texas. He began the job on October 1st, and by most accounts, his tenure was reasonably successful. He backed teacher pay raises and even drafted a $609 million bond package that won over voter approval. However, his career took a sharp turn on March 19, 2018. On that day, during an otherwise routine school board meeting, a former classmate of Heint, Gregory Gay, took to the podium and accused Heint of bullying him during their time junior high school together. Heint was seen chuckling at the allegations, which helped cause the video of the accusations to go viral and become national news, despite the allegations being nearly 40 years old. Heint, for his part, denied the allegations, but others came forward, including an Alabama judge, to accuse Heint of having a bullying past. There was even a lawsuit that accused Heint of beating a man unconscious when he was 18. The case was settled without criminal charges. But in the midst of the bullying allegations, a new set of accusations rose to the surface. Sean Dolan, himself a former Katy ISD student and parent of children in the district, noted on his blog, A Better Legacy, similarities between Heint's 2012 dissertation from the University of Houston and a 2008 dissertation by Keith Rowland at Liberty University. However, shortly after the allegations were launched, Hein announced his resignation from the position, which took effect on January 1, 2019. According to Hein, he and his family were the victims of an organized and relentless and dishonest smear campaign, and he needed to step away for his family's sake. But, while his resignation announcement was met with literal cheers, what happened after added a new layer of controversy to Hein's story. First, the school board set aside some $25,000 to be used in a potential defamation lawsuit filed on Hein's behalf. Second, they gave him a 2-year separation payment, estimated to be worth $750,000. This angered many, who wondered why taxpayer money was being used to provide him approximately 2 years' worth of salary and legal aid after he resigned. According to Dolan, the severance also resulted in a $350,000 penalty on the district issued by the state. However, after that resignation, things went quiet. The University of Houston continued its plagiarism investigation and, in January of this year, removed the dissertation from their site. The university has not commented publicly on the reason for the removal, nor whether any other action has been taken against Hein, but the policy of the university only allows for such removals to happen under special circumstances, including copyright violations, plagiarism, or falsification of data. For Dolan, who has not been sued so far, this was a vindication. While it likely brings the story to a close, it is an ending that leaves more questions than answers and more problems than solutions. The bizarre element. What makes the Lance Hein case so unusual is not the allegations against him. Neither the bullying allegations nor the plagiarism allegations are, by themselves, unusual. Many people in prominent positions face allegations of a checkered past, and even accusations of plagiarism in dissertations are remarkably common. What is unusual in this case is the response by both Hein and the KDISD. With both allegations, Hein and the KDISD never really took the allegations seriously. Though Hein did eventually apologize for his bullying past and admit to being a young man that did dumb things, that came out after details surrounding the lawsuit emerged. Looking back to the plagiarism element, Hein has always denied committing any plagiarism, even after Dolan and others pointed at significant portions of overlapping text. Even now, with the removal of his dissertation, he had not admitted to issues with his work and has stayed silent since the latest news. But what is even more bizarre is the support from the KDISD. The school board never wavered from their support for Hein and never seriously investigated any of the allegations against him. At least some teachers in the district were similar, even holding a rally for him after a school board meeting. Why this was the case is anyone's guess. Hein was largely responsible for a major bond referendum that brought in $609 million to the district and also helped increase teacher pay. However, even that doesn't explain the complete lack of curiosity about the allegations. Judging from the extensive news coverage, no one at KDISD investigated or even sought to significantly address the allegations. This may have ultimately harmed Hein, who could have benefited from an impartial and transparent investigation that showed both he and the KDISD were taking the issues seriously. However, it's also a missed opportunity in other ways. One of the major criticisms of Hein has been his handling of bullying at the KDISD. When revelations about his own past came out, he had an opportunity to talk openly about it, discuss what he had learned from it, why he changed, and how it was going to apply those lessons to his duties. Likewise, with the plagiarism allegations, there was an opportunity to show that the KDISD takes academic integrity seriously, investigate the claims independently, and show students that these issues are significant. They missed that opportunity as well. By rushing to his defense, the board and educators at the KDISD not only may have hastened his resignation by throwing gasoline on the firestorm around him, but they also missed some great opportunities to actually teach the students under their charge. Bottom line, to be clear, the major critics of Hein do have at least a degree of personal animosity against him. However, that doesn't mean that he's the victim of a smear campaign. To find that out, one has to look at the facts. The facts seem to indicate that he is, at the very least, problematic in these areas. The lawsuit against him and the removal of his dissertation don't necessarily prove that he was a horrible person or a rampant plagiarist, but they hint that there were issues in his past. These are issues that Hein and the KDISD ignored and denied. By not confronting these issues openly, directly, and transparently, Heint and the KDISD made things much worse. That's true not just for Heint, but for the students in the district. And that, in turn, is what is strange about this story, that what was best for the students was never really addressed. The board and at least some of the district's teachers rushed to protect Heint without really addressing the issues behind the controversies. In doing so, they missed some great opportunities to turn this controversy into something positive and only harmed everyone involved. Story 17. Not under an NDA, but I am not allowed to say this to people. My employer is an HCM company, and the department I work in administers COBRA. For our friends not in the US, COBRA is a law that allows an employee to pay out of pocket to keep benefits they had while they were employed after a separation. This has been a thing since 1986. In many cases, your employer has to reinstate coverage with the carrier. There is no punishment if they do not. They have to inform you of your eligibility within 45 days or face fines with TAMRA, which is part of the IRS. We are not allowed to tell you that your former employer hasn't let the carrier know. We have to take the blame. There are some clients where I work where we do inform the carrier, but carriers like Blue Cross, Anthem, and Cigna are right now refusing to accept the reports we send them, and your coverage remains inactive. But the majority of the time, the client, employer, is responsible for reporting to the carrier of your COBRA election. There is no maximum time allotted for reinstatement. I've seen cases where the employer, client, has not reinstated benefits for 1 year, until the beneficiary tried to use the coverage and was denied, and they had been paying $2,500 a month just for their medical. This was not illegal, just irresponsible. Reinstatements are the #1 issue I deal with, and it's daily. I have tried to get my employer to make an effort to ensure the client reinstated in a timely manner, and they refuse, saying they do not want to anger the client. I've also written letters to President Biden and VP Harris explaining this situation and to present policy. An expansion of TAMRA to include reinstatement deadlines would do wonders. Story 18. Former agent for a driving app here. I used to handle the driver's part of the app, and that part was rather messed up because I would often get drivers asking why their accounts were taken down. I stopped being surprised after realizing that for every 3 drivers that reached out or so, 2 among them were shut down, either for fraudulent activity or for misconduct. Frauds include starting and stopping without the rider, messing with the GPS to charge the rider with surcharges, especially on airports, or attempting to upload bogus or edited documents. About this one, it was disgustingly easy to bypass the docs filter because there were plenty of countries where the app worked that didn't run background checks. On top of that, privacy policies wouldn't let us disclose the cause of the deactivation either, thus resulting in drivers often trying to sneak back into action with a duplicate account, only for me to laugh in their faces when finding out they were stonewalled because of their original account. On the other hand, there were a handful of drivers who presumably didn't do a thing wrong, but then again, policies would leave our hands tied, and we had to give out the bad news anyway, if you know what I mean. I just remembered another one. Incidents involving assaults, murder, altercations, and the like were handled by another team elsewhere, and we had strict orders never to disclose such incidents with whoever asks about the matter. Since this type of incidents would compromise the company's reputation, we barely had any new updates about them, or no updates at all, instead finding out through news circulating about. This is how I found out about most of the incidents, a fraction involving females being assaulted or murdered in the worst of cases, another fraction involving app drivers being involved in altercations with local taxi cab drivers demanding to GTFO, and resorting to attack the driver if their demands aren't fulfilled. The last fraction of incidents involves drivers being mugged by organized crime. This is also relevant as drivers are often unprotected when in such scenario. Story 19. The Victoria's Secret fashion show in Shanghai in 2017 was full of corruption, kickbacks, and fuck-ups. The Chinese government took VS for an absolute ride for so much stuff, and that's not including all of the middlemen who wanted to get their beaks wet as well. The amount of money that VS spent to have their fashion show in China was astronomical and got them, at a minimum, investigated by the US government for the amount of bribes they were paying. Story 20. IT consultant of many, many winters. The most critical applications in banking, insurance, and finance run on badly outdated machines held together by duct tape, prayers, and compress-end dust, standing in dark, wet corners and mostly forgotten basements. Also, those systems are written in the most obscure and long-dead programming languages, or even directly in assembler for a certain chip set, written by code wizards in their own idiosyncratic dialects, who are now long retired or even dead. Backup/backup systems are mostly non-existent, or the data tapes are worn down to basically transparent tape. Even had a case, around 2020, where a cleaning tape from '99 was still in the bay, due to the robot being faulty. If a cleaner or janitor pulls the wrong plug to find an outlet for their vacuum, there is a decent chance that whole branches or even institutions begins to crumble. Most of those systems will also never be updated, due to their legacy status, aka we don't know what this is doing or even how it is doing, what it is doing, but it is a critical part of our whole infrastructure and nobody dares to touch it. But we will never invest the necessary sums to analyze those systems, write documentation, or even replace them. Story 21. I worked for a company who worked for a company who worked for Cisco Networking. Cisco had created a new product for small business, basically a cheaper version of their normal routers and switches. When hired, I was one of about 20 people, most of whom had zero networking experience. We were told that it was done that way because they wanted non-techies specifically learning the product. This made no sense to me. We were told that we had to get CCNA certifications before we could go live. We were then given a month of boot camp training and personal study sessions. It took about 2 months and a few tries for everyone to get the certification. The problem was that we were 20 kids with little to no technical or networking experience, working on a new product that we technically weren't versed in. We were given generic CCNA training and no training on the product itself, and expected to handle all tech support for the entire country. I once had a call to fix a connectivity issue for a chain of banks. The guy who called me admitted to making $450 an hour and asked me to take my time solving his issue. He called the guy making $20 an hour. Believe it or not, it was the classic tech support question. Is it plugged in? That solved his issue. He forgot to plug in the power. I'm not sure why this was supposed to be tied to other banks, but I'm guessing that it was at a main hub and something wasn't going out to the branches or something. I didn't ask. 90% of the employees on that team quit within the first 3 months of working there. Story 22. There's a government in East Asia that was or still is running a low-key sterilization campaign in Central and Eastern Africa. They do it in partnership with a private company I used to work for. I was sworn in on the project in September 2013. I was with the company until late 2017 and had to sign an NDA that I wouldn't say anything. The NDA didn't specifically mention sterilization, but instead the methods used. The company I worked for with funding from this particular East Asian government set up free clinics in half a dozen or so African nations and offered free healthcare to the locals. Naturally, they went for it because they were getting much better quality of healthcare than they had ever gotten before. They were baited with the quality treatment and then sterilized without their knowledge. The methods used were non-surgical, and the company I worked for was given a quota of 30,000 to 50,000 sterilizations a year by the government funding the project. I don't know if they're still running the program. The company is still in business, but I don't know if they've still got the contract or if some competitor offered a better deal to that particular East Asian government. This is as far as I'm willing to go on the details. Story 23. I 100% believe everything that was said about the work culture at Blizzard, because even the companies they outsourced to had similar issues. I worked for Client Logic, later Seidel, when they had the contract for in-game customer support for World of Warcraft, aka a WoW GM. I was at the campaign from around the time Burning Crusade launched until a couple weeks before Wrath of the Lich King was released, and it was like the Wild West. We were actively encouraged to break workplace norms when it comes to harassment, language, and personal conduct in the name of desensitizing us to what we will see in-game. We were actively told that we could say whatever we wanted, harass whoever we wanted in whatever way we wanted, and as long as nothing got physical, nothing would do anything about it. I was at that campaign from late December 2006 until October of 2008, and I saw more harassment there than all the rest of my life combined, and again we were the outsourced branch of their customer support. I couldn't imagine how bad it must have gotten at Blizzard headquarters, where there was no outside influence trying to temper how people were acting. Story 24. Not I only had to sign an NDA-style contract regarding the specific place I was at, but I spent about a year doing on-site security for an Amazon data center. There are 5 things that people don't know/realize about such places. You won't ever find them on Google Maps or any similar app, They're such important infrastructure that not even a company's competitors want to risk anything happening to them. They eat a lot of pizza, enough pizza that I had to be briefed several times how the local pizza delivery service was a security threat because of how much pizza the techs and workers ate. Someone had to know something important was here. These sites guzzle power, to the point that they have their own city-sized transformer stations dedicated to them. Any problems here and the center either shuts down, or there's an attempt to run the whole place off of semi-truck-sized generators. Each stack of servers makes about $100,000 of revenue for Amazon every minute. Each building has at least 100 of these server stacks. And finally, every single ounce of power, info, data, etc. all runs through a bundle of fiber optic wires that are easily accessible because they require an absolute maddening amount of maintenance. They are also hard to replace, as replacement length has to be order weeks in advance. Which is all a long way to explain that data centers are much easier to find than you think, while also being surprisingly fragile pieces of infrastructure. Even the slightest downtick in energy to the building can cost the company millions of dollars every minute. While a whole server stack going down can take weeks to replace, if it can't be fixed quickly, can erase a large portion of the bottom line. All while the place is run as efficiently as possible by heavily underpaid techs, mechanics, software engineers, and security personnel. Have fun with that knowledge. Story 24. The iPhone 4 had a bad antennae in it, but not all devices. The build process was prone to an error slightly above expected norms, but not super common. We all knew. The job was to tell you it was your fault, or it was ATT's fault. That said, for the customers that forced past that point, we swapped. But there was an extra level of serial number tracking above and beyond the typical process, so your swapped phone would come from a fixed batch. That meant that if your swap didn't relate to connection issues, you got a typical iPhone replacement, but for those with it, you were part of a silent recall. Apple denied this aggressively, and Apple retail employees were fed a lot of weasel words to diminish the perception it was a recall. But it was. 2010 to 2011. Story 25. A very popular website you would know with a public good guy persona for platforming creative people and supporting innovation is actually secretly a pit of vipers who take advantage of those same creatives. Behind the scenes, they have a well-worn strategy for taking advantage of startups in the space. They approach these small startups with promises of partnership, dangle a lucrative letter of intent, a job, and then start working with you on how to start integrating your innovations into their platform. Then the manipulation starts. They slowly start adding friction into the process, so you feel pressure to find creative solutions to making your technology work with their bad system. You think you're helping them, but what you're really doing is helping them supplant you. Meanwhile, you're burning so much time and energy working on jumping through pointless hoops that your growth stalls out and your runway shortens because they technically haven't acquired you yet, but you're still required to pay yourself with your revenue during the LOI period. After gaining just enough access to the startup's technology and background, and after you've helped them work through a lot of the sticky bits, eventually pull back their offer, cut ties, and poof, they develop the tech themselves and launch it soon after the rug is pulled from under you. The company's aggressive legal team ensures this tactic stays under the radar because the NDA they make you sign during the LOI process is so blanket you don't realize it covers this exact sleazy behavior. But the damage is already done. They are the big gorilla in the space, so even when they implement a worse version of your tech, it basically squeezes you out. If you push back with your own lawyers, they throw you a little hush money in exchange for signing an even more draconian NDA, and then you're hosed, but you don't have really any other option if you want any money after months of work. They've done this to multiple startups. I honestly spent months in a deep depression thinking it was something I did, and how I wasted years of my life on it, and let it slip through my fingers. An acquaintance in the industry called me because she hadn't seen me at the last few gatherings. I completely fell apart on the phone. I shared some vague bits of what went down, and she connected me with someone else who literally had the exact same thing happen to them. We swapped notes, then I found a couple others it happened to. I went from depression to being livid. I'm still tangentially involved in the industry, though another avenue, and now when I see other innovations pop up from other startups, I now explicitly seek the new innovators out at conventions or at professional gatherings. Because I didn't take the hush money, I don't have to worry about the liability like some of the other folks do. While I can't talk in specifics, I can still speak pretty pointedly about what things to look out for from big companies that may wish to acquire you. Here's how they will take advantage of you. Here's how they screw you, etc. I can't ever get retribution for what they did to me, but I can at least prevent them from doing it to others. If I can give any advice from this nightmare, trust in agreements, not in people. It doesn't matter how good you think they are as people, or how good the mission is you think you are supporting. The people in a company can change at any time. If it's not in that document, it is worthless. And anyone who says they care about you in the process but won't put it in writing is lying. Story 26. Not exactly breaking an NDA here, but the pest control industry is riddled with scam artists. If you have paid Orkin for a service, you most definitely were severely overcharged. I work for a locally owned company that services one of the largest metro areas in the United States for about a year now, and I have heard countless stories about people being scammed into contracts that companies will not properly honor, as well as look for ways to charge customers to perform services that the current contract doesn't cover. Last week, I went to a nice elderly woman's home to take care of a yellow jacket nest. She told me that one of the larger pest control companies wouldn't come out and do the job for no less than $600 for a one-time service or an $800 for-service contract. Luckily, her daughter was there and had dug into her mom's desk to find the paperwork from a service my company did 3 years ago. So my boss worked out a very fair price for a returning customer, and we had the job done well before dinner time. Had she used our competition, she would have paid over $600. With us, she got the returning customer rate of $140. Had she been a new customer, she'd be paying no more than $200. These companies have gotten so greedy to the point where they are literally leaving money on the table in favor of paying door-to-door sales reps to swindle customers into signing insanely priced contracts. Try and find a local company first if you have pest control needs. Some of them are sadly just as greedy, but there should be at least one diamond in the rough that will offer a more fair price. And don't even entertain one that knocks on your door with a contract proposal. Story 27. A large FDIC-insured bank with 3 million accounts. An entire account database was a giant SQL script that took 6 hours to populate and was housed entirely on a single laptop in their corporate office. They had their database team on rotation, where someone would SSH into the machine at 2 a.m. to run the script. Some days it failed, and they had no way of reconciling any user information on accounts for the entire day. Checks would clear, money withdrawn, and loans given all without any validation on the account or account holder veracity. They just figured they'd untangle any messes the next day. It was so poorly designed that they couldn't tell if John P. Smith was the same account holder with a checking account, business account, home loan, and/or car loan. The data was so screwy and disorganized that reconciling exactly how many unique accounts was a virtual impossibility. We were brought in to build out an effective data structure for them. However, the CIO, Chief Information Officer, saw our quote of 2 million and said, "Let's tell them 6 million, and we can pocket an additional 2 million each." We frickin' recorded all our meetings for transcription, so we had his proposal for fraud on tape. The subsequent investigation and settlement with the bank was the NDA.